What's up, guys? If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Also, please smash that like button on the video and enjoy the show. Do you think, like, immediately one of the major issues I'd have with him being involved with this kind of thing, though, is the fact that I don't remember the exact number, but a significant number of people on the jet were from China,
right?
Which is his next door neighbor, who he's not trying to make enemies with. And I think there were only 3 Americans or something on this thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you took this down, it's a potential China problem for him.
So, listen, there's actually lots of problems with the what I call the spoof theory, the idea that somebody tampered with this data and the plane really went north.
Right.
There's actually a lot of problems with it. It's not a good theory in many regards, but it answers questions like, how come the plane isn't on the southern seabed? How come the SDA was turned back on? How come there was no floating debris found for the first year and a half? Things like this. And so I'm not trying to tell you that this is a perfect theory that doesn't have problems. And so, yeah, but the question is, like, how can we explain the data that we have? And as time went by, when I first, so I waited some time. I worked on it. I floated it past some people. I was very not confident. Everybody was saying that the plane went to the southern Indian Ocean. There was no doubt that it went to the southern Indian Ocean. So I was the only person saying that. Now, there was a whole lot of other sort of stuff that was coming out of left field. That was like, there was a lot of sort of what they called the hero pilot theory, which is that the plane had caught fire, and it was the hero pilots were trying to save it, and then they succumbed, and so the plane flew south. There was people. I mean, if you watch the Netflix documentary, you have people like Florence Deshangi who were saying that the Americans shot it down. There was
we'll come back to that. Yeah.
There was a lot of discussion about supposed eyewitness accounts, one of which was by some islanders in the Maldives who claimed that they saw this plane go overhead, and then a lot of people were like, it went to Diego Garcia, which is a U.S. British base, and so there was like all kind, but there was no evidence for any of these things. And so they were just kind of being thrown out there. And so this, I would consider this sort of part of the like sort of a fog of I mean, you could call it, let's just call it misinformation for the sake of ease. So I eventually came forward in early 2014, and I said, look, if you don't find this plane in the southern seabed, there is a possible explanation that I'm going to run past you. It may be, it's physically possible. I don't have evidence that this happened. I can't prove to you that this happened, but it seems to be that there is a physical possibility that you could do this thing that would make it seem like the plane went south when it really went north. This was widely dismissed as another conspiracy theory. It was like put on par with Diego Garcia, because we've been talking now for a while, right? A long time. Many light years more time than you can spend talking to Richard Quest on CNN, right? What I've been trying to tell you about Doppler precompensation is not something I can get across in a 2.5 minute hit on CNN. So there's no way that I can say my idea with and also justify it in a short clip. So basically, I'm going on and people are saying, so Jeff, you believe that the plane was stolen by Putin. And I'm like, whoa, no, don't.
Can we not start with that? I know that's good for ratings.
It's like I'm trying to say that like that the evidence is puzzling, and there may be an alternate explanation that we really need to consider. And so the disappointment for me isn't that people don't immediately believe this idea. The disappointment for me is that the officials have refused to even acknowledge that this observation has been made.
Is it also possible, though, because if it's provable that it could have gone either way, potentially, which I think you have pretty good evidence for that it's possible. Maybe the pilot, and I don't think the pilot was suicidal, I agree with you, but for the sake of argument, let's say for a minute he was.
Right.
Maybe you want to go sightseeing north as his last descent. You know what I mean? And then we never even looked there because the whole search went into the sea, and it went into some nondescript area. Maybe it wasn't even Kazakhstan. Maybe it was somewhere else, east or west or whatever. Crashed into a mountain. No one ever heard from it.
So
Possible.
So basically, I said there's two possibilities. Either the BFO data is innocent, and it was generated as a result of things that people did who didn't know how the BFO worked, or it was tampered with, which requires such a level of sophistication that it would have to be a state-level actor, because you would have to understand not only how to fly a plane, not only how air traffic control works, how satellite communications work, but essentially you have to have a sophisticated electronic warfare capability, because what you're doing is something that is very arcane in any corner of the world except for electronic warfare, which we can talk about later or more or now if you want. But it's a mindset that a pilot would certainly not have. It requires very specific skills and very specific outlook.
Can you explain? I mean, you're using the word warfare,
right?
So we do got to dig into that a little bit. What's the connotation there?
So there's an entire field of the defense industry called electronic warfare, and it started with the development of radar during World War II. And so radar is a way that you can see where your enemy's aircraft are. They can see yours, and so you get once you develop detection measures, you have to develop countermeasures, or it behooves you to develop countermeasures. One of the earliest one was they would fly these giant bomber formations. At the British would do it at night, and they would just dispense chaff, like little fluttering pieces of tinfoil, like they throw in at New Year's in Times Square. What's that stuff called? Confetti.
Yeah.
It's like metal confetti, and you strew this, and because so when you beam your radar waves at this cloud of confetti, it can't see. It's like a shroud, right?
Yes.
And so as the decades go by, there's all kinds of crazy things that you can do. And one I think that's worth talking about, it's pretty cool, which is, so you're sending out your radar, and we talked about Doppler before, right? So if you're flying towards me, and I shine my, to use this example of 100, I'm sending my thing out at a frequency of 100. It's hitting you, you're coming towards me fast, so it's coming back to me at 110. Right?
Yes.
And so what I can do is, I don't want to see birds. I don't want to see clouds. I'm only worried about invading fighter jets. Okay. So I have a thing called a gate, a Doppler gate. And basically, I'm not going to look at anything that's under 105.
It's like a noise gate. It's the same concept.
Yeah. Exactly. And so you're flying at me at 110. You're flying at me. It's bounding about 110. I see it. You're the only thing that I see because you're the only one who's moving fast. You stand out like a sore thumb, right? Okay, now your guys on the other side know that I'm doing this Doppler gating. And you're like, how do we avoid this? And we were talking about Doppler precompensation before. You do a version of that. You say, okay, I'm going to measure what your radar is sending out, and I'm going to blip you back at like a really strong, like 100. I'm going to precompensate. So you think I'm not shining at 110, I'm shining at 100, and I get like out of the gate, something like that. And so this kind of Doppler spoofing is basically something that's been going on since the 50s. There was a famous case during the Cuban Missile Crisis where the Cubans were, expecting to be invaded by the Americans. And the Americans sent up these balloons, I think out of a submarine or something. And the balloons were transmitting this Doppler shifted radar frequencies. So the Cubans were like, oh my God, there's like a whole squadron of American planes coming in. And this is in the 50s. So fast forward now 60 years. And this is like, so when I talk about Doppler precompensation to 99.99% of humanity, they're like, that is the craziest, most arcane thing I've ever heard. Around. But if you work in the electronic warfare business, you're like, yeah, Doppler spoofing. Forever. That's what we do. We wake up and we have Wheaties and Doppler precompensation.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.